Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. There was a quiet knock in the night. Camille rushed fearfully to the window, squinted her nearsighted eyes, peering into the darkness, but could see nothing, and asked in a trembling voice, "Who's there?" "Open up," she heard outside. "It's Michael Mansfield," cried the landlady, who recognized her husband's voice. "You're back." She ran out onto the veranda, and a moment later let in her daughter and a man with sunken and tired eyes. It took Camille a good hard look to recognize her husband. She rushed toward him with unbridled joy, and he turned away and said, "I'm dirty. We must wash, then we'll rejoice together. Now the water is warm on the stove. Maybe you should eat first." The woman glowed, casting her eyes on the long-awaited man. "I'll eat only a little. Don't feed me too much. I haven't had a crumb in my mouth for a week." Michael threw off his jacket, hung it on a hook by the door with the cloth of his hand. "Where have you been, Michael? It's been so long. At least you wrote, didn't you?" Camille asked with reproach in her voice. "I couldn't. I'll tell you everything afterwards. We didn't know what to think. My sister had already mourned you so many times as if you were dead, and I believed you were alive, so I went out. But all sorts of things crossed our minds. We thought maybe you'd been murdered or something. Good for you for not burying me before my time. And you didn't get married. How's Ethan sleeping?" "He's in town for work. He's got a good job now," his wife said with quiet joy. Michael sat down at the table, drank a cup of milk and bread, and said, "Enough. Camille, pour me some water and get the laundry ready. I can rub your back," the woman offered. "Don't," Michael replied categorically. His eyes seemed alien. "Go to bed. I'll sleep on the couch." "What is this?" Camille sighed heavily. "A bed. Nothing. The main thing is that I'm back to live again. Sleep." There was silence in the house. Camille lay in bed and closed her eyes. She remembered her younger years, hot meetings with her husband, when they both treated each other with tenderness. Why was he now so alien and indifferent? Is there nothing left of their love? Now he is a stranger around and not underfoot. What to do? How to live? What to say to him to make him realize that it is impossible for her to live without his love, tenderness, affection? At least say a nice word. "Christina, are you asleep?" Camille asked her sister. "I'm awake. Where do you think he's been all this time?" "I think he's been hiding. I think he's been hiding. I guess that's his fate. What's next? How should I know? Hurry up. I have to get up early tomorrow." "At least he hugged me, kissed me, said affectionate words," said sadly. "I thought you were a woman. Let him do what he wants. There's his son. We have a family. Maybe she'll come back to reason in time. She'll feel a man in her." The door creaked open. Michael came in, lay down on the couch, and after a few minutes his measured breathing was heard. Asleep. Lovingly thought Camille let him rest. He came back. We're all together at last. This is a great happiness. The next day, when the son Ethan learned that his father had returned, did not even talk to him, glumly gathered himself, and roughly whispered so that his mother did not hear. "Zekum do not intend to communicate. You can go wherever you want. If you stay, I'll go myself. I don't like being in a house with a criminal. Are you going to work?" the mother asked. "I'm on my way," replied the son. He looked angrily at his father and ran out the door. "He's grown up," said the father. Pain sparkled in his eyes. He took a deep breath and slumped his shoulders. "Growing up, thank God," Camille replied. "Where on earth have you been?" asked the wife. "On a job, on a construction site. And then it so happened that the owner refused to pay. Hired some thug to deal with us quietly with the laborers. I ran away at night, left everything behind, walked through the woods to get home. So I didn't write anything. Everything was left there quickly." Michael told a story he made up. It was a lie. He had served 5 years in the colony, sacrificing himself for his son. Now he escaped when exhausted by the heavy regime and beatings, pretended to be sick, won a place in the prison hospital, and from there he cheated. He made a daring escape. At night while the convoy dozed off. 5 years ago, he told the family to move to the country to his wife's sister Christina, explained himself vaguely. He sold his apartment in the city for debt, work problems, and he needed to get away for a while. Did he actually pay whoever he needed to pay with the money from the apartment? Hired a lawyer to keep the family from knowing about the accident. That wasn't easy. Investigators insisted on questioning his wife and son. Even with money, Michael Mansfield barely managed to keep his family from being tortured by the investigation. He couldn't buy himself out of jail time, but he saved his wife and son from a terrible blow. For how long? No place to live. He came home like a beaten dog when he felt sorry for his family. And now what? Life in prison had turned Michael into a cruel, hard man. He already regretted that he didn't tell his wife everything at once and sacrificed his son. And all for what? Here's the son, now he turns his nose up. He didn't appreciate his father's deed. So what was it all for then? Turning away from his wife, Michael sat down at the table, put his hands on his head, and remembered the terrible day of the crime. The happy family life in town was marked by Ethan's 16th birthday. Michael fulfilled his son's wish by putting him behind the wheel of his old Niva. Ethan waived off enrollment in a driving school, promising his father not to take the car. And if he did drive it, then only together outside the city, where field roads are almost devoid of traffic. His son's passion for driving awakened with furious force. Against his wishes, his father enrolled Ethan in the best of the city's driving schools. But all for nothing. One day crossed all the family's aspirations and separated Michael from his family for years to come. The son took the car keys from his father's jacket late at night in Thane, sat behind the wheel, deciding to take an unauthorized ride through the city streets. At an intersection, a traffic light was stirring with a yellow light. A woman with a stroller was hurriedly stepping across the crosswalk. Ethan didn't even have time to slow down. He didn't look at the road for the running lights. Mommy realized too late that the approaching car was not going to brake forcefully and pushed the stroller away from herself. She herself was hit, fell on the hood. The car hit and flew off for a couple of meters in the ditch. The child in the stroller was orphaned in an instant, but the boy did not immediately realize what had happened. He was horrified when he heard a bang. Too late, when he saw the obstacle in the road. And then he just stepped on the gas. Other drivers immediately slowed down, jumped out of their cars before they could save the baby, got the license plate number of the perpetrator. The son drove home, put the car back where it was, didn't say anything to his father. Michael learned about the accident the next morning, when the son had already left for school and the wife to work. There was a knock on the door. Entered the investigator, a strict inspector and an investigator of the prosecutor's office. They introduced themselves as Michael. Your car was used in a hit-and-run collision with Citizen Smith. The victim died at the scene. You are detained on suspicion of murder and failure to render aid to the victim. How drunk Michael perceived what was going on. Got himself together, fumbled for his keys. The car was parked there on the hood with traces of the collision and bloodstains. All of this was an unthinkable, impossible event. A painful thought crossed out all existence before and after. Son. From then on, the investigation began. Quickly, however transformed. Witnesses were confused in their testimony. They said they couldn't see the driver's face in the headlights. One of them claimed it was a younger man behind the wheel. Taking the blame for his son, Michael got 10 years in a maximum security penal colony. His life in custody did not immediately go well. After learning about the crime, the man was beaten to a pulp on the first day. Long unbearable 5 years passed in a gloomy fog, which left dark misfires on the heart. After the final beating, Michael refused to get up. He was dragged to the hospital, left without much obstruction, thinking that the prisoner was already at death's door, and not today, so tomorrow he would give up. Having gained strength, having thoroughly studied the plan of the area, the man made an escape. He reached his family on foot, longing to live a little, to see his family and son. But it hurts in his chest to lie to his wife. He can't bear to tell her himself or to wait for the police. Still, at least I get a little bit of freedom. My son doesn't need me. So now an honest man, a loving father, will have to bear the cross of imprisonment. At that time, his wife gave a voice to distract him from his bad thoughts. "Poor you," Camille moaned. "Maybe you should hide. I'm tired of hiding." "Let it be what it will be. I will live as I can," calmly replied Michael. The quiet life didn't last long. 2 weeks later, 2 men in civilian clothes came for him. A police officer and an unfamiliar investigator from the city. Michael's eyes ran helplessly, as if looking for salvation. But there was nowhere to hide. "Hello, Captain Justice Benjamin from the maternity ward. Well, tell us about yourself, hero. What is there to tell? You know everything. We know everything, but not everything. Who you really are is a fugitive criminal, Michael." Article 264. Camille gasped, till she woke up. She slumped to the floor and was as still as if she hadn't lived. Michael jumped up to his wife, screamed as loud as he could, yelling for an ambulance. He never got the chance that day. Michael was taken away to say goodbye to his wife, a fugitive. A new trial and a new sentence were looming. The man shouldered the salty jacket in which he had returned from his escape. He thought bitterly that he had run away for nothing. Now anyone could accuse his family of being related to a criminal. His son would get in trouble at work. Besides, Ethan didn't repent at all, as if he didn't bring trouble to the family. What kind of man has he raised? He had no remorse or conscience. It was bitter to realize that an unworthy man had grown up. What was going to happen that would change Ethan? It was hard to think about it, to accept the bleak canvas of hopelessness, glimpsed in the future of unbroken tunnels. Camille came to when Michael had already been taken away. She opened her eyes to see a white cloth of medical gowns in front of her. "Camille, get ready for the hospital," one of the attendants said insistently, in a high-pitched voice almost to you. "No, I don't need to. It's all right now. I'll leave on my own. I'm lying down. You're refusing hospitalization, and for nothing. Pressure attacks long ago you tired," insisted the doctor, wiping drops of sweat from her forehead. "There was nothing. It's from excitement. Grief in my family is barely audible," whispered the hostess, huffed, looking at the uninvited guests. "Sign here," slipped her a piece of paper, poking her finger into the edge and remembering the pen. Soon silence reigned in the house of sickness. Our hearts clenched, a buzzing in her head as if she hadn't slept. For days the world blurred with hopelessness. She wondered what she would say to her son when he returned. She felt sorry for both herself and Michael. Why such an incomprehensible and cruel fate? She dreamed so much to live near her husband, to take care of him, to create a family together. But here, they were next to each other, and happiness bypasses them. Some people and events constantly radiate them. Camille wiped her tears, went out into the yard, and looked around. A light fog rolled through the village. The morning was gloomy, as if the earth had frozen in a heavy, foreboding sense of something terrible. Camille walked along the road under an old lime tree. When I live, I asked myself, I'll die alone, without warmth or affection. Walk around the yard. Harsh Camille, a little shook curly short hair, and thought already more firmly, a little withdrawn from the first shock. All misfortunes come to an end one day, and so will my misfortunes. If only Michael would bear it, explain himself, write me a letter. What really happened? She had little faith in his watchwork, even when he told her not to wait for him, to live her own life. How blind she'd been, not asking about her husband, not looking for him, as if in a fog. All those years she lived with her son first after his father disappeared. He shut down. He didn't say anything to his mother and left the house for long periods of time. 6 months later, silence. The son began to move away from his painful state, caused, as it seemed to the mother, by the fact that the father abandoned them. And then everything got better. In an instant, The boy came to life, enrolled in a technical school, became an engineer, and got a good place in the city. All this time, Ethan refused to speak or remember his father. Did he really know? The mother grievingly pondered over her son, determined to speak to him frankly when she arrived. But Ethan did not return that day, nor did he come home for the next week, until Camille herself went to see him at work in the city. Matusha turned softly. She to him, "I'm not going to say anything. I won't ask you anything. You'll share it with me as soon as you can, and come home. It's not the same without a man in the house. No one to help. My father's gone. It's not like I rented a place in town. It's easier for me. But if you need help at home, I'll come. But I don't want to deal with a family of criminals. If they find out at work, they'll kick me out. How can you?" My mother exclaimed in amazement and shook her head reproachfully. Anything could have happened. Without knowing, how can you accuse a person? He may not be guilty of anything. It's just the way things are. In any case, stay. Does it hurt me that you've turned your back on your family? The son didn't say anything. Something subtly bitter flashed in his eyes. He rose abruptly and ran away from his mother. Camille sighed heavily and started on her way back. When she got back to the village, she walked along the path thoughtfully and did not notice where the police officer William suddenly appeared in front of her. He sat down on his motorcycle, looked down at Camille, and said, "You may not go down that road again. Soon everyone will know that you are the wife of a criminal. I'll tell the people all about you. Just think of the times we live in. Anything can happen. Ethan, we don't know if he's guilty yet. How could he not be guilty? He killed a young mother to death. Drunken beater almost ran over a baby. I checked with the investigator. Your husband left like that. Left a woman to die. Couldn't you have saved her? You better run. Camille, I won't stand for it. 5 years a widower's been looking for your fucking family. To get rid of you. You're unlucky. The man's a tough one. He's gonna avenge his wife. He's gonna kill you or your little boy. William, did you know how to do that? What do you look like? Think about it. What's the use of rehashing the past? If Michael was guilty, now he's punished to the fullest. Bitter, Camille shouted, almost hysterically. Her body trembled with anger. Her heart pounded implacably. Having learned the terrible truth, the wife did not doubt her husband's innocence for a moment. He never drank. He drove carefully. He had never been in an accident in many years. All these thoughts ran through the poor woman's mind, but her eyes glittered furiously. There's no redeeming what Michael did. One word from me, and you'll be gone. I didn't know what you were really like. You ran from your wife to me. And when I kicked you out, you became my enemy. Is that what revenge means? If you want to take revenge on me, then live in your house until you die for your sins. Don't say a word. Don't scare me with my sins. Think of your own. You won't be here much longer. Drive on by, smart ass. We'll see who outlives who. Camille proudly walked around and hurried to her house. But she realized from the last phrase, the policeman had said that she would be found soon. She had to leave. It was necessary to prepare, to collect everything necessary for herself and her son, which would come in handy on the long journey. Christina greeted her sister grudgingly. So where are you? All the work is standing by. What work, Christina? We're so grief-stricken. I'd better go to the Oscars. Camille shared the latest developments. They sat on a bench outside the house. They consoled each other as best they could and decided to go as far into the unknown as possible, on the condition that Christina stayed behind. It was worth it, Camille, but could Ethan be persuaded to go with them? Camille was even more worried about his fate now. Her gut told her that her son was involved in his father's business, but he was hiding it from his mother and would not share it. To avoid getting in trouble with me, you can temporarily move in with your family. Christina Smith said we might get revenge, and he'll let us know where we live. Why are you listening to this blabbermouth? All he does is talk. I'm a criminal's wife, Camille mumbled sadly. And that says it all. Is it really true? I can't believe what I'm hearing, Christina asked. We have to be ready for anything. You see, we're newcomers, even though we've been living here for a long time, not even registered. We could be evicted. I'm used to you. How can I be alone now? Maybe I'll ask my brother to stay with me for a while. I don't know. Why don't you go talk to him? That's my sister. Poor us. Christina exclaimed and hugged Camille. No happiness for us. They sat and cried. I could feel the uncertainty, confusion and fear floating away with their tears. Camille got up from the bench first and quietly said, "Stop crying. We have to live. We have to work. You and I, Christina, will survive all our enemies. We've done them no harm." Camille and Ethan rode into the unknown. The son exercised until he feared retribution, determined to move for his own safety. And so the family left their settled home and farm. They traveled by freight car, having agreed with the driver so that their trail would be lost, cut off. They did not even take tickets. Camille found a seat near a high window, threw her things on the floor, comforted her son. Don't be afraid of anything. People live everywhere. I don't mind. I'm even interested, Ethan answered, quietly rejoicing that he would no longer see his hated boss, would no longer go to work and perform routine tasks. Where are we going? I don't know. Son, you can look where there are shifts. You will find your specialty everywhere, and I can be a janitor, and we can come back. It'll be a while. Ethan kept watching the fields and forests outside the window. For the first time, he heard the names of stations and towns, and they kept driving forward as the towns and scenery changed. Having hastily looked through the list of vacancies, they even contacted the employer. They got the go-ahead, so they decided to find at the nearest station to change to Lazarev, where they promised work and lodging. On hitchhiking cars, we have already reached the village, where people lived in small houses. One of them was given to Camille Ethan. The boy frowned as he looked at the wilderness they had been forced into by fate. Nearby stretched a canal of green, undrinkable water. Along it grew steep trees, probably poplars. I was comforted by the fact that in this godforsaken settlement, there were workers from different parts of the country, friendly, helpful, and people ready to help the newcomers. These people willingly told a little about their lives, about how hard they managed to adapt. This is where we are going to live, Camille said, looking around at the accommodation they had been given. How long do we have to put up with this? Ethan was indignant. He was ready to go back. But then he'd have to betray his mother. Our father's still got about 7 years left on his sentence. I got the address on my last date with him before he left. He wasn't much of a talker himself, didn't even want to meet. 7 years, my son asked in surprise. His whole body shuddered, his face affirmed, as if it had become a fireplace. So he and I are doing time together. What are you saying, son? Maybe they'll release us sooner. Then we can come back sooner. Ethan was quickly put to work. The work was not dusty. They didn't ask for much. The pay was 5 times higher than his old job. The guy was excited and decided to earn money for an apartment, move closer to the sea, and then live in his own pleasure. Camille also started working. The woman did not refuse to do anything. She was used to hard work, but the move and the climate affected her health. One day she felt a pain in her neck, and when she felt a small band, which grew 3 days later. A fever rose. Camille was frightened. What if something happened to her? How would her son be left alone? Who would look after him and care for him? A local doctor was called in. A man with a pleasant face and a soft voice, not yet old black hair, came in and examined the patient and said that it was carbonic anemia, most likely caused by the change of climate. He applied some ointment either for it or for simple human attention. Camille felt better. She almost cried. For the first time, she felt cared for. This handsome, manly man had stirred her hitherto dormant heart. Here's the thing. Camille, don't worry, said the doctor. I'll cure you of this ailment. I've had to deal with other illnesses, and I'll make sure you don't do any more hard work. What am I supposed to do? You're gonna clean my office. I'll get you a job as a nurse. It's not much, but it's still a good salary. Thank you very much, Liam. Feel better. I'll come back tomorrow to check on you. The doctor visited Camille for a week, until the tumor finally went away. I'll give you 3 more days to recover, and you'll start your new job on Monday. You and I will have plenty. Thank you, Liam. You brought me back from the dead. You're welcome. It's my duty. I met your son. He's a wonderful boy, well-mannered. I think we'll be friends. He's different. Sometimes, you see, he grows up without a father. Where's the father sitting? He lowered his eyes in shame. Camille, and then she added, I've written to him, but we haven't heard from him. I hope he's alive. What's he in for? The doctor asked. Then he realized, it's none of my business. Camille sighed softly and said, poor people suffer for no reason. It's not his fault, but he's hiding something. He took it all on himself. In these moments, she was still pushing away from herself the terrible thoughts concerning the truth of that hit and run. But in her mind, there were still images of insight, of the true state of affairs. I look forward to seeing you at work, Liam went out. And Camille thought happily that the world was not without good people, but that they would get by in the middle of nowhere. The time would come, they'd come home, even if they had to live here for a few years. The woman remembered her garden, orphaned and home, and cried quietly with longing and sadness. Camille went to work until lunchtime washing. She cleaned the floors of Dr. Silverstav's office, and then in the evening, she washed medical dishes. Sterilize it one day on New Year's Eve. The doctor was late at work, sat writing at his desk and prevented Camille, who was in a hurry to get home, because she wanted to celebrate the holiday with her son and cook him something tasty for dinner. What is it, Liam, that you've earned so much? All the people are getting ready to celebrate, and you haven't gotten off work. It's nice to be with you, Camille. I don't want to go home. Let's celebrate New Year's Eve together. The man suddenly proposed and looked intently into the eyes of the former woman. I have some wine here. I have some candy, and a melon I bought at the market when I went downtown. The doctor took a bottle of wine out of the cupboard and invited Camille. Put your rags aside. Sit down at the table. The woman wiped her hands while stroking her curly hair and quietly sat down to the table. The man kept looking at the guest with tenderness, filled a glass with wine. Put it down. Let's drink to the new year, my dear. May it bring us happiness, good health, and all the best in our lives. May it be so. Bless you, Liam. I answered. Raised the glasses. We clinked glasses. You're just a heroic woman. Suddenly, a man confessed. And very beautiful. What are you saying? I'm the wife of a criminal. Such a stigma, which will not be washed away for the rest of my life. The woman said sadly, sighing bitterly, Good hostess, I can see that everything burns in your hands. I liked you from the first time I met you. The time for confessions had begun. Camille knew it would be soon. She could barely keep her heart from going into her chest. I don't even know how to thank you for everything, Camille said. You don't have to do anything. People should help each other. I've been wanting to talk to you about an important topic for a long time. I don't know how to begin. The woman looked boldly at the doctor and said with a sincere smile, Finish, don't be shy. I am a simple woman. I will understand everything. The doctor was silent. Then he took out of his pocket a pack of MP smoked, hiding his eyes behind a cloud of smoke, and quietly said to us, Camille, You'll have to live here for a long time. My wife divorced me and left, and your husband is nowhere to be found. I would be happy if we could be together and walk side by side through life. Camille sighed, and her face blushed. She tousled her unruly hair and said in a trembling voice, Liam, darling, anything but that. I'll never cheat on my husband as long as he's alive. And he is. I will wait for him always. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it's my bitter truth. He's the only one I love. All right, that's enough. "I understand," said the doctor sorrowfully. Camille jumped out from behind the desk, threw her coat over her shoulders. The man didn't let her go so easily. He jumped up next, tugged her hand, and nestled it against his lips. And the women? A voluptuous wave, like a poison, swept over her passion, to plunge headlong into the tenderness this handsome and determined man was showing her. The woman wanted to give up, but managed to overcome her feelings. "I'll go, I'm sorry." "Wait, take a melon. Give it to your son as a gift from me." The doctor did not look at it, studied the gift, and turned away with annoyance. "I apologize if anything is wrong. Happy New Year." The doctor bent down again to kiss Camille, but she jumped out of the door, frightened. She liked the man very much, and her soul was drawn to him. But Ethan was waiting at home, complaining daily about the lack of life in this hell. Camille stepped off the porch, saw the black sky above her, rare stars, but hurried home. Her son met her grudgingly. "What took you so long today?" "It's the end of the year. I had to clean up properly. I've prepared the table. Come on, let's celebrate." "The doctor gave you a melon. Where did he get it in the middle of winter?" "Is there such a thing?" Ethan smelled the melon with pleasure. "How was the party at work?" "It was fun." His mother asked, remembering that the workers wanted to have a corporate party. "What kind of fun?" "No girls, hardly any. The workers jumped to the balalaika. That's all. But now, it'll be the weekend. You'll have a rest," Camille said, thinking about Seliverstova, how she would now work with him, and how to behave in general to pretend that nothing had happened. A day later she came to work, noticed that the doctor sadly meets her gaze. "I feel awkward. I'll have to change jobs," Camille thought. "I'm so used to it. I'll have to do something about this place. It would be nice to get out of here altogether." The days were quiet but dreary. Liam pestered Camille, not letting her breathe. The woman felt she would give up just a little more. But a month later she received a letter from Michael. He said he was working at the mine, but he'd fallen ill. He is now undergoing treatment. The letter was short but warm. Michael was waiting to meet his wife. Said he loved the man, never broken by prison. The event stirred. It gave Camille the strength to wait for Michael's return. But she had to move now so her paths would never cross again. The neighborhood center found her a job bagging cotton. She rented an apartment. There was room for Ethan, who had moved to a higher position. A new life began for the boy. He liked it better in the center, as there were no entertainment in the village, and here there was civilization. Cinemas, swimming pool, gym, and other joys of the modern world. The boy made a lot of friends. He was rarely at home. At that time, his father pulled the burden of prison life instead of his son. Work in the mine, where Michael was imprisoned, was hard and dangerous. With poor nutrition took a lot of energy. The man tried not to think about the fact that he would have to live like that for another 7 years, for which he was sentenced. From time to time, there were accidents, flooding, methane explosions, and people died in the mines. No one tried to save the prisoners. The only lucky thing was that there were freelancers working nearby who treated people with understanding and humanity, even though they knew they were criminals. The workers shared bread and hot tea from thermoses. Michael bitterly realized the wrongness of this life. The native son never repented. Moreover, he cut his father out of his life, while strangers showed him sympathy. What was there to live for? The strength was leaving the man, who was losing interest in his existence. Sometimes the man returned with thoughts to this world to cheer himself up. He thought that it was not by chance that he had been given this trial. Diseases did not take him for a long time. However, the daily breathing of coal dust for 2 years still had a bad effect on his health. Michael developed a dark spot on his lungs. The disease began with a strong cough and high fever, so he was put in the hospital. While they examined and treated him, Michael, in his spare time, took up the notes he had been writing in his head for a long time. However, they were just diary notes. He wanted his manuscript to live on, and his son read these notes and understood everything. In the ward where Michael was assigned, there were other patients who distracted him with complimentary conversations. Someone tugged on the man's shoulder. He flinched in surprise, turned his head, saw the faded eyes of one of the TB patients. "Let's go play cards, clerk." "I can't. I don't feel well." Another time waved away Michael, dissatisfied that interrupted his musings. "What are you writing?" "It's calling." "But write." "We won't be here long," replied the coughing patient. "Why are you throwing your germs around?" The man was indignant. At the voice, a nurse came running in to stop the outburst. "Everyone is having a hard time as it is." Setting aside her paycheck, Camille collected help and sent the money to her husband for treatment. Thanks to the help, he bought himself a warm place in the office. He was able to transfer to a lighter job in a building instead of a mine. From time to time, he carried gifts to the doctors, and they put him in the hospital and treated him as best they could with the medicine they had on hand. Had there ever been sick people in Hippolyte's ward and pause? Michael gazed up at the starry sky through the thick glass on which droplets of moisture crawled. The realization of his son's meanness once again weighed heavily on his soul. The man leaned back tiredly on the pillow. He felt that it became difficult to breathe. His heart ached. He lay for a few minutes, waiting for relief. The pain in his heart was growing. He thought that he should ask the nurse for some valerian, though he was still afraid that they would not give him some poison. However, he got up and quietly, so as not to wake up any of the patients, went out into the corridor, where there was more clean air. After 3 years, Michael was released. He immediately decided to go to his wife and son, whom he had not seen for almost 10 years. The long road stretched in time for almost a week, and the desire seemed to be the meeting. He decided to forget forever what he had to endure in prison. He rode in silence, glancing sternly at his fellow travelers. No one wanted to tell about his sufferings. I believe that they had faded into oblivion. Fear, camp, death. People in detention died of hunger. Cold was forced to endure suffering, humiliation, abuse. The pain he experienced had to be thrown out of his memory and soul. Otherwise, as he realized, it would be impossible to live further with an exorbitant resentment against himself, his relatives, and friends. Forget. The wheels of the train were knocking when the boundless steps spread out behind the car window more than once and warmly. Michael joyfully thought that soon he would see his relatives, and it would be his reward for long suffering and patience. He believed that his son had not only grown up, but also strengthened his soul. That means that he would accept his father and repent of his deed. The small town where Camille and Ethan lived was not far from the station. I drove to it. Michael easily found the right street and house from the address. He knocked on the door. A tall, bearded man with clear eyes opened the door. "Am I in the right place?" His father didn't recognize this man as his son. "I'm looking for Camille." "Does she live here?" "It's my mother," the man said, confused and resentful. "So you, Ethan, are my son?" The guest exclaimed in surprise, looking into the stranger's face. "I am Ethan." "So you are, father. But you don't come to me with nonsense. I don't want no prisoner for a father, and don't you dare say anything to your mother. I'll pretend for her sake that I'm glad you're back. You should be flogged." Parasites, such ungrateful in his heart. His father suddenly hissed. His eyebrows moved menacingly and glanced from Papeliev, about to give his great-aged son a thrashing. But he didn't have time. Footsteps were heard. A woman with a tired face came out to the noise. She said hello, looking intently into the face of her guest. So did he. And suddenly, Michael. Through the fine wrinkles and shadows loomed the forgotten face of Camille. The man rushed toward her, stepped forward. She recognized him at last, and with a surprised cry, Michael returned. She fell against his chest. He put his arms around her and stroked her head. Camille shuddered. "Stop it. Why are you crying?" "It's all right," her husband said. "You're breathing so hard. What's wrong with your lungs?" Concerned, she asked. "It's a legacy from working in the mine. But I have not had tuberculosis. Don't worry, it's not contagious." How did you get there? Why didn't you write? We would have met you. I wasn't at the resort. Camille didn't stay there with me. As soon as they let me out, I ran to you. I felt like it would never end either. I didn't want to die there, and it was unbearable to live. Camille looked into her husband's face and said, "Thank God we're together. I feel like you've been through a lot too, but you did a good job raising such a son." I didn't recognize him. I thought I'd made a mistake. Wrong place. Michael hugged his family. The son still held himself apart only for his mother's sake, and he did. But in Ethan's chest had long been pushing, drowning out my sense of conscience. He was ashamed of his criminal father, but he could not forget the day when he committed the crime. He was the one who was supposed to do the time. And then his father stepped in. Nobody asked him to be a hero. The son would have gotten away with it, run, but he wouldn't have done time. Why did the father get so excited? He took such a burden on himself. He should bear the cross himself. And he just lived, suffered in a foreign land with his mother. All because of his criminal father. The son couldn't stand it any longer and left the yard. Michael and Camille sat on a bench and sat for a long time remembering something from that long ago past, when the son was still very young and did not remember much. It was good and light for them to sit together and feel that there was something very important in this life that united them, despite any obstacles. After they entered a pleasant dwelling, well furnished, clean and clean, plenty of food. The furniture is new. Sit closer to the table. Maybe you want to eat. The wife fussed with care. I don't want to eat, but I'd like some water. With love and gratitude, replied the man, still not believing in his return to the fact that the hard years were behind him. Tell me, how did you live here? Yes, everything is fine. We work slowly. Camille went to work every day. My son was in the service too. He hardly ever came home. A terrible secret. It was weighing him down. The father irritated with his frightening appearance of a man who had been sitting for many years. For the first time in many years, Michael had enough free time to finally put his notes in order. After painstaking labor, sent the manuscripts to the editor. His only copy, without letting his son read the story. From the editorial office came a polite reply thanking him for his labor and asking him to wait a little longer. With the release of the book, Michael realized that no one took his work seriously. Dreams that he could become a recognizable writer crumbled. It was replaced by a bitter realization. No one wants it yet. Great disappointment gripped his soul. Michael lamented his fate and became angry with his son, became silent and irritable. Over time, his health deteriorated. The man went to bed outside in the open air. It was hard for him to breathe. His heart was pounding, almost flying out of his chest. The doctors said the climate wasn't suitable. However, the family had no intention of staying here any longer. Ethan's contract could be terminated at any time. As soon as the son finished the third term of the contract, they decided to return to their native village. True, Camille did not immediately agree, as I imagined that Midrozhkn and his nasty daughter Maria, who gave us no life. I don't want to think about Karachevo. She spoke anxiously. Let's stay in the Far East, such a beautiful city. Not Camille. My health is weak. I want to die. I'm at home among strangers. I want to retire to my native land. Objected Michael. You will live without thinking of death, asked the wife. I've been wanting to go back for a long time, said the son. When did you come to an agreement? Camille was surprised. The first day you came back. It was clear right away. I don't belong here. Again, Camille was on the road, buying and selling things. Michael was packing and getting the luggage ready to go. Ethan was gone all day. Somewhere on the street, he was saying goodbye to his friends in the service. A girl Ethan was friends with wanted to study to be an actress, dreamed of going to Moscow. She called him to come with her. The man was still ashamed of his father's dark past. The truth about him and his family might come out. It would be embarrassing. Let's do this, he told the girl. If you go to school, I will come to you in Moscow. Find a job. and help you in any way I can. If you don't get in, you will come to me in Karachi, and there together we will decide how to live on. It's a deal." The girl agreed easily and put her hot arms around Ogai's neck. A week later, she came to see Ethan off at the train station. In the presence of his parents, the guy felt constrained. He only stared intently at the girl, trying to remember her as beautiful as she was now. When his mother called, he retreated a few steps, stopped, waved, and jumped into the car. Then how long was the ride? No matter what Ethan did looking out the window or lying down with his eyes closed, he saw only a girl with blonde straight hair in front of him because of the separation from his beloved. The meeting with his native village was not as joyful as he had dreamed and imagined. The old station building looked the same as before. The same tall trees welcomed green branches under the hot wind. Sparrows flew down in flocks and landed on the platform. To the returning family, it seemed as if they were back in the old days, and when they looked, they noticed that they didn't see a single familiar face. Michael went to the station square, saw a young cab driver, asked him how much he would charge. He replied that the ride was not expensive. They drove in silence, looking at the surroundings, and did not recognize the former places. New trees had grown, disappeared, and the fields were overgrown with weeds. The cab driver tried to speak, asked who they were, where were they from. Michael evasively explained that they were traveling for work. But, as they say, well, only where we are not. That's why they come back to their homeland. Now many people are looking for easy money. They go far away. The guy answered. That was the end of the speech of the car about the body by blood. Turning onto a field road, which quickly led to a small forest, opened Shorter Cow. Michael, with excitement, immediately noticed 3 new buildings nearby. He easily recognized the other houses, mentioned the owners, looked into the yards where someone's children and grandchildren were huddled. Life went on as usual. Maybe only now the man realized the tragic nature of human life. At the end of the village, they asked the cab driver to stop, thanked him, and walked to their house. They looked closely at the trees, sighed at the native odors. They wanted to see their farm as soon as possible. How come? The house is long gone. All that's left is daycare. Bitter, Camille exclaimed. The family stopped at the yard, which was nothing but a pile of stone. Ethan struggled to keep from snapping and yelling at his parents. He wanted to go to the city as soon as possible, rent an apartment, and live a normal life, without shame or fear of anyone. Everything's gone. What kind of people? Angrily, Camille said, "Did you think you had a palace waiting for you here?" Overcast, smiled Michael. At least they left the stove. Everyone needs a stove. How can you be so calm? I'm happy to be alive and free. Will we build a new house? Suddenly, a familiar voice called out to them. I see the criminals have returned to them. William came. Well, you tore down the house, and now you've come to rejoice in our misfortune. I'm on the offensive. Camille, you're wrong to attack me. People thought you were gone for good, so they took everything of value. William started making excuses. There's nothing to be sorry about. Your old house was worthless, and then that little man came along whose wife your father had killed. Ethan shuddered and turned away. So he and his men used it for firewood. Buy a log, and I'll help you build a new house. Wow. Camille dismissively threw the figure of the aged district officer and asked, why are you from the bosses to the builders? I've been in simple ones for a long time. Young, literate people came to replace us, and we have done our time, served the fatherland. How is your family? Michael asked. No, I've already buried my wife. She was in the hospital for a month, and then the doctors said to take her away. Let her stay at home. They prescribed some pills, and she drank them, and one day she didn't wake up. Easy death. In the coffin, she was lying so beautiful, so calm. I couldn't even believe she wasn't alive. Left alone with his daughter. Smith stepped with his nose. People are leaving. Michael said quietly, where are we going to put the new house? Camille asked. We'll put it here, said the man. Maybe we shouldn't. This place is unhappy from the beginning. The wife hesitated. We made him happy. Orphaned, the family stopped, looked back at the ruined yard, and each of them imagined the future house in his own way. But for some reason, they each saw the one that had stood here before, so familiar and native. Only their Ethan wrinkled his nose. Everyone wanted to get to the city, away from their parents. Michael looked into the well. Glimpses of oxen, water black as oil. Our well is blocked. With a grudge, he said, we'll clean it up. Camille replied calmly. The Mansfields moved toward their brother's house. He was sitting on a bench, interested, watching the people who were approaching him and did not recognize him at once. Only when Camille said hello. The brother got up joyfully and began to hug and kiss his relatives. Look at me, Camille. I have become so faded in voice, he said, and tears kept running from his eyes. It's disgusting to look at myself in the mirror. What's the matter? As long as your soul is young, my sister said. I'm not young either. Over the years, my husband didn't even recognize me right away. You're here for good. There's no home. You'll live here for now. Let's go inside. I'll buy you something God sent. The guests had just sat down to eat. An excited Christina came running in, hugging her sister, crying and laughing, wiping her tears and saying, "You're back. How many nights have I not slept? How long have I thought about you? Enough. That's enough. Calm down." Camille stopped her with a smile. Christina stepped back and turned to her nephew. "My God, who is that man?" "Ethan, is that you?" "Me? Who else?" Barefoot replied the boy. That's how the Cavalier grew up. There was no limit to the peasant's joy. She immediately began to tell about the village news. After a little while, a message came from the girl Ethan that she had entered the Theater Institute. But Ethan never went to see her in Moscow. Instead, he took a new job in the city at a security agency, settled in a hostel in the service. He wanted to save money for a trouble-free life in the capital. Now the money he had saved up was not even enough to buy an apartment. The boy quickly learned a new profession, and he even liked it. After all, he dreamed, like every boy, to protect from trouble, guard, and even save people. In the first few months, he wrote the name Anna on his shoulder, then immortalized his beloved, who was always with him now. Soon the guy was promoted, appointing him deputy head of the security service. Soon the unexpected happened. Anna sent a long message thanking him for his understanding and longtime friendship, but informing him that she had met a great and true love. She wrote that she had married a good man and was happy that she could. Unites not only love, but also a common cause. Plus bragged that she had already been invited to a movie shoot. Ethan read the message and realized that he had lost it forever. Life had lost its meaning. A new blow struck the unhappy man like a punishment from heaven. A sin committed in advance. What was he to labor for now? Work? No life. Ahead instead of the future is darkness, where there is no love and never will be, and no pity for his father. What kind of monster is he? Because of him, his own man spent more than 10 years in prison. He sacrificed himself. And who is he? He's nothing. For 24 hours, Ethan lay on his bed facing the wall, clenching his teeth to keep from screaming with hatred and powerlessness. At night, he tried to sleep, but the voices in his subconscious woke him up and kept him awake. Daddy's daddy ran him over. In the morning, the boss called, ordered to report to work in a severe psychological disorder. The man entered the office to the management, sat down with his head down on the table, and go to work. "Hear you what the resort ordered." "I cannot," replied Ethan. "What can be sick, so go to the hospital." "My soul hurts," quietly answered the guy. From grief, he lost his strength and could not move. In fact, it turned out that it was better to die. They keep the mentally ill in the nut house. Go to work. The boss jumped up to your subordinate and slapped him on the cheek. Ethan suddenly looked into the eyes of his interlocutor with hatred, suddenly jumped up from his chair, grabbed a clerical knife from the table. Polos kicked himself in the stomach. Blood in a narrow strip marked the wound, and began to drip to the floor. The boss turned pale and screamed in a frenzy. Ethan slumped helplessly to the floor and closed his eyes. He felt neither pain nor fear, and a moment later he lost consciousness and did not hear how he was carried on a stretcher to the car, how the surgery was done, how he was placed in the intensive care unit. He woke up in the evening, saw a man in a white coat above him, and asked, "Why am I here?" "Did you have surgery?" The doctor answered. "Surgery?" Ethan asked again. "And only now I remember everything. How do you feel? What hurts?" "Nothing." "What about me?" "Cut my skin. Did a little damage to my intestines, but thank God I was hungry this morning. So there were no complications. It could have been really bad. Think about it. What do you value more than your own life, or some unpleasantness that threw you off balance?" "I will. Only I can't beg for your forgiveness now. I'm a worthless man. I don't deserve to live. Just lie still for now. I've got 12 stitches. Make sure they don't come apart, or we'll have to sew them up again. Just don't tell your relatives." The man asked. The doctor left. Ethan tried to turn on his side and felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. He tried to feel his stomach. It appeared to be all renamed. Again, the resentment against himself came from far away. Thoughts of Anna shifted somewhere in the background. He shoved it away. He raised his hand to nail his hair. The movement echoed with pain. He regretted now that he had been so intemperate and had almost destroyed himself because of some woman and a foolish impulse. His father had given half his life for him, and he'd almost wiped out those efforts in one fell swoop. He had no right. He's the only one his parents have. How could they be without him? The thought of his family finally touched the callus, as it had seemed to the boy before. He brushed away the tears sternly and firmly decided to live near his mother and father, to help them at the construction site as long as they were alive, as long as it was possible to please them with their presence. 4 days later, Ethan was transferred to a ward, and after a couple of weeks he was discharged. He suddenly returned to Karachevo. On the threshold, he stood with his head down and tried his strength. "Batya, let's go. We need to talk." Michael looked sternly at his son, realizing in advance that the latter had realized everything. "Father, I'm sorry. I don't know when you'll be able to forgive me. I have no right to forgive you. Your forgiveness will be yours, son. It's all behind us now. If we can't change anything, there's no point in rehashing the past. Thank you, Dad. I didn't deserve that sacrifice. Things will be different now." His father turned away, a man's tear running down his cheek. Behind him, pain, beatings, a dark past in custody, all for the sake of his favorite son. But the boy lived freely. That's the main thing. First thing the mom noticed was the tattoo. She got really worried. Why would he do that to that girl? What's he gonna do to himself for her? Michael's reaction to that was very restrained. "Who cares about us?" The husband replied calmly. "You'd better ask why the son came back from the city early." "Why the son?" Ethan smiled strangely and replied cheerfully, "I'm fed up with everything there. I want to take care of my parents. Everything I've saved up. Let's spend it on a new house, a 2-story one." Camille was suspicious and asked insistently if you were joking, son. "Did something happen?" "Nothing happened. I had an operation. You can't work after that." "What surgery?" "Worried?" asked Michael. "And I know they cut something out there." "Show me," the mother said. Ethan, sighing, pulled up his shirt and showed the red scar on his stomach. The parent stared at Ethan stunned. "Oh, my little son," cried the mother. "They gave me anesthesia. Nothing hurt me. Look, how much can you eat? I'm hungry, or are you going to starve me? The kid's sick for fun." "I'll be right back," answered the mother and fussed at the stove. They smelled familiar dishes. Ethan felt happy and free for the first time in a long time. The weight of guilt had been pinning the lice to the ground for almost 15 years. Slowly it dissolved. We can start a new life. In the evening, women's voices were heard outside the window. Some were singing, laughing. Camille pulled back the curtain, looked outside, but saw nothing. The girls were already sniffing. "That a beau has appeared in the village," muttered the mother. "Now I'll go and disperse everyone, not travelers." Angrily, she said, "Hide him under your skirt." "The kid's too old," noted Michael. Ethan, meanwhile, without a word about the family, slipped out the door. He returned in the morning. Camille was beginning to resent him for sneaking around and keeping her parents up all night. The husband stopped it. "Let the boy live. He's not a little boy anymore." Ethan smiled warmly. His father sipped his milk, climbed onto the couch, and a moment later his steady breathing was heard. Camille was working in the yard and thinking about her son. It would be good for him to continue working in a new place. They could take care of the house. Maybe they should go to the apartment, but the thought of living within four walls now dragged the woman. She got used to life in the village and did not want to return to the city. But she did not want her son to be pulled into the hard village life. What was the point of working without a salary? To live on the farm when you have a profession. Michael soon got a job as a watchman. Camille, too, was thinking of going to work the way one should go to build one's house. The son, too, was looking for work in town, especially since it's only about 15 kilometers away. If he got a good position, he could buy an apartment. It was time to start a family. Now Camille dreamed of waiting for grandchildren. She didn't rush her son to take over. She wanted him to rest, to gain strength. How much hard work had he endured? Busy with her thoughts, she did not notice Christina entering the courtyard. She sat on a bench, put her hands on her hem and said, "You work hard, and you don't know what your son is doing." "Why?" Surprise raised his eyes. Camille glared at William and met "That's what." "How do you know?" "The whole village is buzzing. Sophia is bragging that Ethan has promised to marry her. And that's all the unhappiness we need." The mother clapped her hands together and looked anxiously toward the palace, where father and son were sawing wood. "I'll show him, Sophia. Anything you don't pile on the lad unawares," stopped Camille Christina, knowing how hot she was to talk to him quietly, affectionately, in a motherly way. "Explain what's going on. Tell me how you've been leaning in for over 10 years. I'll give that girl a drink if she doesn't give up on the guys," shouted Camille, who couldn't contain her anger. Maybe on purpose so her son could hear. "You're so stubborn. No matter what you're told, you do it your way." Michael spotted his sister in the yard, left work, came over, said hello, asked her how she was doing. "You know how to live. Don't have your own house. Don't get upset." "Sister, I'll build a house. I'll take you in while you build a house." "It's like that," said Christina. Ethan was chopping wood. Camille looked in his direction and said, "Michael, hear what our son has done. Sophia Sam has been visiting. Christina says that the whole village knows about it." "When did he have time?" the husband said calmly. "It's gossip. Ask him yourself." "All right, I'll ask him," Michael agreed. Christina adjusted the handkerchief on her head. "It's hard." "Oh," got up from the bench. "But I'll go. I'll take care of it myself," she said. Camille invited Camille to join us. "Thank you. I'll go. I'm walking slowly now, until I get home. That's how I'm going to have dinner." How sly. Camille thought of Christina. Doesn't want to mess things up with her nephew. Everyone wants to be nice, but Sophia's a viper too. Michael can't be lured. She wants his son so badly. It won't work. The gate slammed behind Christina. "What do you want?" "Like a mouse on grits," Michael asked, thinking about what to do. "Do nothing. Or is he stupid to get married so soon?" "Not into you. He's a success." "Maybe because I raised him myself. He only looks like you. He didn't have a father around. Who should I look up to?" "I'd like to talk to him now, because I've lost it. I hate that girl, you know." After lunch, Michael deliberately waited until Camille went inside and started talking to his son. "What are you going to do next?" "I'm going to look for a job. I think I might stay here." "We're here." Surprised father. It's almost free to go to work and have nothing from it. That's how people live. Only idlers live like that. Maybe you've already decided to get married. Ethan smiled and answered, I think I'll have to get married at some point. Is it really with her? Why? She's a pretty girl, the son said, happy to hear what he hadn't dared to tell his parents yet. You know how many such pretty there are in the world, 1000000, and you need to choose one, which you will love all your life unsatisfied, said the father. I'll get married. I'll have one. Why put a clamp around your neck so early? You still have your whole life ahead of you. At that time, Camille entered the house and said indignantly, Don't you remember, Ethan, how we were almost killed because of Verka's father? Children are not responsible for their parents. Ethan objected. What's the matter with you two? Sophia wanted us dead too. Are you ready to warm a snake on your chest? Camille shouted in a huff. Ethan looked at his mother's face in confusion. He rushed to the door, grabbed his jacket, and sprinted out of the house. Just as mad and stubborn as you said, watching out the window for his son Michael. Where did he run to? Camille asked anxiously. Don't worry, he won't go drowning. Like you did when you were young. What have I done? When will he come back? I'll go crazy if he's gone for a long time. Calm down. Let the boy think about what we told him. It might be good for him. The husband comforted his wife. What's going on in there? Asked the brother who entered the yard. Nothing a little. She yelled at her son. Did he take offense? Replied Michael. Ethan returned to his parents. 2 days later said he got a job as an engineer in a construction organization in the city. He was temporarily living in a hostel. Camille was overjoyed. She asked what you, my son, will do there. I'll be a senior wherever they send me. I have to justify my profession. My father was happy. The main thing is that they gave you dormitories. I'll help you build a house. I'll buy the apartment myself. The son looked at his watch and warned, I've come to get my things. Camille calmly thought that he would probably give up Verka if he suddenly changed his plans so abruptly. God forbid you should be related to that family. You should at least visit us, your mother asked, and leave an address so I know where to find you. There's nothing to find me. I'll be fine. I like the city. You don't get bored there. The son replied cheerfully. You just be careful, son, not to get into fights. Oh, always you, Mom, something that makes up. I only want to eat as soon as possible, because I'll be late for the next bus, Ethan answered, dumping his suit, shirts, and underwear into his suitcase. The son ate with gusto, and his parents watched him with amusement. Their son's bloodline. The daughter has grown up. The boy is on his feet, and he needs his parents only to check in with them from time to time and show them what he has become. How long ago did you celebrate your 16th birthday? All right, I'm out of here, Ethan said. God bless Eddie. And remember what I told you. I forgot about Sophia a long time ago. You really should. There are plenty of beautiful girls in town. Michael only smiled, listening to his son and remembering how hard this son's happiness had been for him. When Ethan left the house, Camille said sadly, Ethan has left again. Now it's just you and me. Why alone? My brother's napping on the sofa. Christina's coming over. Soon the grandchildren will come. Nowadays, girls are clingy. Not like in our time he didn't dare to hang on their necks. Michael laughed. The next day, Camille went to the city and got a job on the railroad. She had to work 3 shifts, receiving construction materials. Now she rarely saw not only her son, but also her husband. Even on holidays sometimes could not meet. Those who accidentally met Ethan in the city said that they often saw him drunk, walking around town, checking out the diners. Goes home and doesn't show his nose. Michael went to see his son at work, sat down, opposite and coldly, bespeaks that not even 10 years have passed. I've been in detention from call to call. Was it for this? The son looked sorrowfully from behind his eyes. He shamefully averted his eyes. I won't live by my conscience. I'm sorry. Camille several times visited her son in the dormitory, but there did not always make him. It wasn't until New Year's Eve that luck struck. Camille and Michael were at home together waiting for their son. He did arrive, but not alone. Along with him walked in a beautiful hair, a girl smiling, friendly. "Meet my wife," Ethan announced from the doorstep. The mother shuddered like a wife. "Where from?" "From the city, originally from Minsk region. Works in a cafe as a cook. Anyway, he cooks good food. I won't go hungry." "What's your name?" Michael asked. "Ludmila." "Sweet to my heart," Mila answered father and invited me in. "Come in. The table is set, just waiting for you." Everyone looked at the young people and wondered, "What a beau. Never married, never married. But you have a wife." "We got married. But thank God," Camille nodded. Michael helped the unexpected daughter-in-law to take off her coat, led her to the table, showed her the place, filled the glasses with wine, and said, "Here's to the happiness of the young people. Live in harmony and love. May your dreams come true, and we old people will rejoice in your good fortune." You all drank wine. Only Mila barely killed. She doesn't drink. That's good. Not depraved, Camille thought, and asked when was the wedding, son. "Yes, we had a wedding. My 2 boys and my 2 girlfriends. We went to a restaurant, had a few drinks, and it was over." Camille remembered that she didn't have a real wedding either. Everyone has their own destiny. "So where do you live?" Worried, mother asked. "My sweetheart and I bought an apartment," bragged the son, with a movie in his eyes at his father and mother. "We have to start building a house," said the father, "and us. We'll build. The family has increased. Do we have guests to meet?" Michael smiled happily. "Let's drink to the new year. May it help all our plans come true." "Bitter," Camille proclaimed loudly and solemnly. Mila looked shamefully at Ethan, but he hugged her and kissed her heartily. Michael smiled contentedly and thought, after all, my son has justified the life I gave him. Gave him 12 years of life. In the spring, Mansfield began construction on the subway. The man was still helping out. Even when he wasn't invited to the site, he put up walls. His son helped. Over the summer, they put the roof on, built the furnace, even built a barn to house the livestock. Then my granddaughter Zoya was born. The daughter-in-law moved with the baby to Ethan's parents to help nurse her. Camille gave the baby all her love and tenderness. Michael marveled as he watched his wife. She was up in an instant, happy, as if the feeling of youth had returned to her. And the grandfather himself liked to amuse himself with his granddaughter, listening to her delicate voice. A year later, the daughter-in-law gave birth to another grandson, Jack. The house became crowded and noisy. Camille felt happy. Then came a letter from Camille's older sister, Wendy, who had lived in America for many years. She had already been told the news about her son and grandchildren. Someone complained to Wendy that Ethan was a bad son, not inviting his parents to his wedding. What does he like to drink? Michael knew many of the relatives, out of jealousy, were ready to embarrass a man to make themselves feel more important. Of course, maybe Ethan is not a perfect son, but not worse than others hold the family. Loves his wife and kids. And as for the shot, who doesn't drink nowadays? I was surprised by something else. Living 1,000 kilometers away in America, Wendy was eager to find out about his family, to influence Camille and Ethan. His Michael was persistent in calling him to visit, luring him with his wealth, bragging about the 2-story house where she lived happily with her husband in a rich and free country. In one message, she suddenly wrote Camille, "No need to go. Come alone, I'll show you all of America." She persisted in reminding me that she was childless, which meant that the American inheritance could go to her son Michael and her grandchildren. After all, there were no other heirs. Still, Wendy missed her homeland, dwelling on references to the past. All the more so because she had once had a crush on Michael. He'd felt it at one time and hesitated to choose a wife. He liked the thoughtful, intelligent, well-read Wendy. But Camille was impulsive, selfless. Managed to tie him to herself, however, she moved old age. Michael was afraid to admit that he was gradually losing his sight. The strength was leaving his body. What was next, God knows. However, it was necessary to protect his son and his family. He pulled himself together and wrote a long letter to Wendy and her husband. Hello, dear Wendy and Noah. Received your letter, for which we thank you heartily. Glad you are doing well and are healthy. Enjoy your life. From seeing friends and from working in the garden, I thank you heartily for inviting me to visit you. However, I'm convinced that I won't be allowed in. You know my background. Besides, only close relatives of the father's mother's brothers or sisters are allowed abroad. I'll tell you about Ethan. He used to like to hang out when he was single. Now that he's got kids, it's hardly ever the same. He's good to me and Camille, to his wife. He celebrated his wedding very modestly, only with his closest friends, as he didn't want to burden us with the hassle. Come and meet his family and see for yourself. He's a good family man. We are happy to have grandchildren in our old age, and we're happy that everything worked out great for our son. Our daughter-in-law is beautiful, neat, and cooks well. She is from the village. Work is not afraid. The only trouble is that old age is already reminding us of its presence. But everything is fine. We wish you success, good health. Greetings from our large Mansfield family. He decided to take the letter to the post office, although the day was frosty, but the breeze was already warm for spring. On the way, Michael went to the store where the villagers usually gathered to wait for fresh bread to be delivered. This time, there were several old men and women gathered there. One elderly man was quarreling loudly with a sales clerk, Shina. See what a bitch she is. She cheated me out of 20 cents. You think I'm old and can't count. Sophia threw 2 coins on the counter and yelled a 20 at you. Just get out of my face. You're getting on my nerves. I'm gonna punch you in the face. I don't care if it's a grandma's grandpa taking the swing. If you try to call the police, they'll soon calm you down. Sophia started threatening me. I'll file a complaint today. You won't cheat here. Enraged, the customer promised. Michael pulled the old man by the sleeve and said, chuckling, still flipping with a hammer. And the collection of what? To make it die. Cholera, it's eternally out of balance. Let's go out for some fresh air. Let's remember our youth. Grandpa's angrily scooping coins off the counter. Michael, you're the only smart man I've ever respected. They left the store. At first, they talked about the farm. Only then the man noticed the mailbox hanging on a pole near the store and got excited. He dropped a letter in it. Come on, I'll walk you home. Come on. The 2 old men stomped along the village, looking at the houses where once lived other people who had long ago moved to the cemetery. Now the children and grandchildren of the deceased walked through the village and resembled their predecessors with their facial features. The cycle of life in nature, smiled Michael. And I'm still living. And how do you feel? He asked. When I woke up this morning, I think my fingernails were the only thing that didn't hurt. I'm all beat up. And when you wake up one day and feel nothing hurts, you'll know you're dead. He laughed. Ugh. What are you saying? The old man was angry. No matter how it is, the time to rest will come. When it comes, then we'll talk. Now come on, what's more fun? How many grandchildren do you have? 2. I have 5. I even have 1 great-grandson. I'll outdo you. The peaceful conversation made Michael think of his complicated life. He walked home and thought that many things could have turned out differently. Christina met him at the house. Why are you frowning? I've been thinking. How long have I lived? I've done nothing good. I don't think I've ever done any sins, but I still have enemies in the village. Who am I interfering with? Christina looked at me for a moment, and then suddenly she burst into tears. It's all because of you. You're the reason I'm alone. You didn't let me get married. You stole my youth. Quietly, Christina came out. Camille. People around. The woman frowned and walked away. Michael nervously invited his hair, helped before him by the influx of fog. Sometimes Michael feared that someday the day would come when the white light would be covered by an unsightly fog. And then no, death would follow. But should he blame fate? He's had a good life, thank God. How many men died, and those who worked at the mine with him? How many boys didn't return to their families? That everyone has his own fate. I chose it myself. I go as far as I can. As far as I can. Soon Michael was sent to the hospital for a checkup. He could no longer work as before. A committee was to determine his competence. The diagnosis was disappointing. Mansfield suffers from a mental illness in the form of schizophrenia. The cost of my sacrifice is exorbitant, the man thought. Michael left the hospital tired and devastated, not knowing whether to be happy or sad that he had been declared mentally ill. This diagnosis is the bitter truth of his life, from which it was difficult to come out alive. But he came out, even if his soul was maimed. Bodies of fallen leaves stirred underfoot. Autumn was moving in on the city. Michael walked down the boulevard towards the train station. Wendy sent more and more letters and parcels from America. It was obvious that she longed for her family, but was afraid to come, to leave her settled life. However, she insisted on bringing her grandchildren. Camille made up her mind and traveled to America. Was it scary? Of course, she would have liked to take a family member with her, but Michael wouldn't go. He's been declared schizophrenic. Ethan has a tattoo on his shoulder, and his wife has a different name. The daughter-in-law is taking care of the kids. Wendy's anxious to see her granddaughter. But it's not advisable to take the girl away from school. There was no point in taking Christina with her. It would only spread gossip after the village. After weighing all the circumstances, I decided to go alone. When the papers were prepared, put on Camille's simple black dress, took all the necessary things, put them in a backpack. Weary of the train ride to Moscow, she slept through the entire flight to America. At the airport, she was met by Wendy and her sister's husband, who hadn't seen each other in over 30 years. They didn't recognize each other right away. Wendy took a long look at the people who were coming to meet her, until she realized that the tall, thin, aging woman was her own sister. "Are you Camille?" I answered the younger sister, looking at the small, chubby, pink-cheeked Wendy. "How have you aged? It's disgusting to look at," exclaimed the American. I stare at my sister. I'm tired. I work nights on the railroad, picking up construction materials. And when I come home, there is no rest either. Household, yes, grandchildren. Wendy suddenly cried, hugged her sister and kissed her. "You're my martyr. Meet my husband, Noah." Camille held out her hand to the old man with the dark glasses. "Hello, Noah. Nice to meet you. Thank you for the letters and packages." "Hello," my sister's husband replied, and held out a large bouquet of yellow roses. "Let's go to the car. Tired on the road?" "No, I slept the whole time on the airplane." "Thanks for the flowers." They got into the shiny white car and drove through a city with tall buildings, bright advertisements, and lots of people on the streets. Look, Camille, New York is the richest city in the world. America is a free, happy country where even a working man can buy a big house and live there. Do you also have the opportunity to move in with your family? Your grandchildren will have everything they need. Wendy said inspirationally, "I care about that. After all, they are my blood too." It is true that Noah has kinfolk too. The house will have to be divided, but I think we can make a good arrangement. "I wish to God you'd say that," Camille said. But she was bored with the city. Her heart yearned to go home. Wendy visibly parted. The body on the round face was choosing and NOSIK. Her sister had dyed her hair a golden color, so she looked much younger than her years. To a nice pink and lilac dress, very suitable, picked up in the tone of lipstick. Next to her was her younger sister in a black dress with a gray head. Felt old and ugly. "You look good. I'm glad that you, of all our kin, are lucky enough to live in prosperity. We've had a lifetime of grief to remember. It's all right. You'll get some rest. We'll spruce you up. We'll buy new clothes, and you'll be a goddess." Wendy wants to live young, until she is 100 years old. Noah said mockingly, "Would you like me to go down like a hen and run around you?" "You won't." The wife replied irritably, I, thank God, do it myself. I do not need to run around me and hide from old age in vain. I'm tired of your philosophy. The wise man was found. They drove out of town, rushing along the wide highway for quite a long time. Wendy kept asking about her family. At last, they entered a small town. There were low buildings with typical red roofs. Unlike New York, there was plenty of greenery and flowers. The car stopped near an attractive two-story house. This is our house coming out, Wendy said. While Noah put the car in the garage, the sisters walked down the driveway and planted on both sides with colorful roses. Katya's house was really furnished with tasteful rooms, glowing with warmth and coziness. Good, you have with delight, said Camille. Everything shone, shining with cleanliness. Wendy set the pre-prepared dishes on the table, fed her sister from the road, then led her into the small room. This is the room we keep for guests. Getting Camille settled in. All stood on the threshold, looking at the curtains and covers of the cathedral. It's all so beautiful. It's scary to touch, she said. Don't make it up. Lie down, rest, and I'll sit with you. I don't sleep well now. I wake up many times in the night, and then I can't sleep. Tell me about yourself. How are you here? We haven't seen each other for so long. It's okay. It was hard at first. Then I got to know people. Learned the language. I got a job. That's how it was. I got along with Noah. To tell you the truth, I regret that I ever tied my fate to him. They wanted to send me to India to work. I didn't really want to go there. That's when I was introduced to Noah. What, Noah? Camille asked. That's what Noah is called in American. Well, when he found out, he decided to help. He agreed to give me a sham marriage. He wasn't a bad man, but I didn't like his looks. But over time, we became friends. We bought a house together. Noah had the first floor and I had the second. He supported me financially. I got used to him. 2 years later, we got married for real. I got pregnant, but I couldn't carry the baby. I had an operation and was warned that there would be no more children. That's fate, Wendy sighed. But you are happy here, and you have a son and grandchildren. And soon you'll have great-grandchildren. I think your grandchildren are mine too. I comfort myself by understanding that they are in these walls and the beauty of happiness, and in the children and grandchildren life has passed. You can't turn back anything. Wendy sighed. Rest, we'll make another deal. She smiled sadly, waved from the threshold, and left the room, closing the door behind her. Camille woke up out of habit, washed her face early, got dressed, and went down to the first floor. In the kitchen, Noah was sitting at the table drinking coffee. The pleasant aroma of the drink filled. The kitchen seduced. Good morning. The guest said hello. Smells good. Good morning. Noah replied cheerfully. You'll have coffee. Don't mind Wendy. My wife likes to lie in bed. The host got up, seated his guest, poured her coffee, opened the refrigerator, took out smoked meat, 2 eggs, and began to fry scrambled eggs. You always cook for yourself, because I don't trust your sister. She tried to poison me once. God be with you. Noah, what are you saying? Camille exclaimed in surprise. I'm telling the truth. Do you understand? She was living with me. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at some sectarian guys. I'm tired at work and don't realize what's going on with my wife. And she tells me she doesn't want to live with me. Let's sell the house. I told her, live with whoever you want. I'm not selling the house. If your lover loves you, let him take it without the house. She screamed and cried. It happened. I don't want it to happen. That's when it happened. I came home from work on a hot afternoon, got a bottle of beer out of the fridge and took a sip. And there was vinegar in it. Wendy poured it in for something. I ended up in the hospital, had stomach surgery. Could she have done it on purpose or not? I could have been prosecuted. But I loved her. I forgave her everything. Noah put the scrambled eggs on 2 plates. He put one in front of Camille and invited her to have some American eggs. Yes, it's the same everywhere. But you know, Noah, I don't believe Wendy would do this on purpose. I mean, she's always believed in God. Noah asked me to take over the kitchen while I'm here, asked Camille. With pleasure they ate, drank coffee, smiled at each other. A good relationship was immediately established between them. Wendy entered the kitchen. He grumbled unhappily. An oppressive silence settled at the table. The hostess took small sips of coffee and said without addressing anyone, "Soon the guests will arrive. We have to get ready. What can I do for you?" asked Noah. "Go to the grocery store, buy some milk and fresh bread." "Understood," replied Noah, and humming under his breath, the jolly man went out. "Death will come to him, and he'll sing songs to her too," said Wendy irritably after her husband. "Why do you keep gnawing at him? He's a kind man, sociable, cheerful. He's a slacker, not a bad man. I hate him. If I could, I'd stab him with a dull knife." Don't start Wendy in the morning. Is that what's tearing your heart out? Do whatever you want. I'm going to go to the apartment for a bit, and I'll see what's wrong. What about you, making the menu yourself? Camille stayed in the kitchen. She went about her usual business. She did everything quickly and spaciously. When Noah returned from the grocery store, the kitchen was bubbling and smelling delicious. The guests arrived at 12 o'clock, all sitting around the table, eating, praising Camille's skill. At the table, cheeky girl Emma pissed off Camille in every possible way, mocking life in Russia. When the guests finally went home, Wendy went to see them off, and Camille and Noah stayed at the table. "That relative is sad. People have forgotten how to be happy and cheerful," said the host. In the morning, Wendy came to her sister's bedroom and sat on the bed, complaining of insomnia. She really looked tired. "How did you sleep?" she asked. "Thank God, I sleep well. I don't sing at home every day. I go to bed late and get up early. I'll rest at your place like at a resort. Listen, I keep wondering how Michael let you go. What if you stay here? You know, we don't care about ourselves anymore. As long as the kids and grandkids are happy, and you can stay here with me if you need to, I will. Even if you don't see your husband again until you die." Wendy asked in surprise, "How long do we have to live? Don't you love him? You never loved him." Wendy shouted indignantly, "I put up with everything. Never betrayed him, never reproached him, never demanded anything. I waited for Michael from all prisons, from all roads. You know how to make a man's head spin. My old grandfather is capable of nothing, and he's being questioned to do something nice for you. Noah is a good man. He's trying to please me as a relative. You're sly." "But I'm not stupid," said Wendy. "I'm not leaving you at home. I'm taking you to the Russian convent. There you will sit and wait for my death and inheritance for your grandchildren. How will they bury me? Then dispose as you wish of what I will leave you in the monastery." The sister marveled. "Can I do that?" "Why not? You know what? This isn't a very sincere speech we're having. I realize you're still alive and well. Wendy, I wish you live a long, long life, and my grandchildren are groomed and fed. They'll be fine without your inheritance." Oh, I'm offended already. "Get in the car. Let's go home," said Wendy. "Why would I be offended? You invited me. I came, I saw you, I talked to you, and thank God. It's time to go home. People will laugh at me if you go that fast. Let's go shopping for presents. Do whatever you want," the sister said indifferently. The next day, she and Wendy went to the supermarket to buy presents. In the evening, Camille was awakened by a touch on her shoulder, opened her eyes and saw Wendy, who said guiltily, "You're asleep." "And I can't sleep. Something's keeping me awake. I can't figure out what it is. Tell me about your grandchildren." "Nice kids. My granddaughter is learning to play the piano. She draws beautifully. They're friends with each other. That makes me happy. It's hard for me to imagine your life," Wendy said sadly. "We have everything here. There seems to be no problems, but there is no happiness." "What did you see happiness in?" "I wanted to have a big friendly family of a husband, beloved children and grandchildren. And I have none of that. How did you, sister, take my destiny? Destroyed me. Bitterly, said Wendy. Camille sat up on the bed and asked what was what. You have no idea. I really don't know what you're talking about. You have your own life, but you stole my destiny. It was I who should have been with Michael with reproach and with tears in my eyes, said Wendy. But what is he to be with you? Not to listen to you, not to tell you himself how he lives with you. He chose me. I've loved him all my life. What's that got to do with you? I don't understand. I've loved him all my life. I've only thought about him. And he writes me wooden sentences without feeling. Camille looked at her sister. She knew that Wendy had once liked Michael, but she couldn't imagine that her older sister had carried those feelings through her life. Michael is a different person, Camille said. He didn't love you, he loved me. You can understand me. You're the one who drove him to this state. You made him schizophrenic. If I had been with him, he would have been a wonderful man. He had everything going for him. Natural intelligence, charm. You poisoned his life. What kind of soul do you have? Your head and your soul are empty. I hate you, your son and your grandchildren. I hate you all. Wendy rushed to Camille, grabbed her by the throat, began to choke her. Her sister broke free, turned away. Is that what's bothering you? Go get your Michael. I'll see how you handle this job and the ideas. Camille picked up her bag, started dumping her stuff. Are you going to go? You're not going anywhere. I'm gonna send you off and bury you here. I'm going to Michael. I know what he loved all his life. I'm the only one. Are you crazy? Camille answered calmly. Noah came into the room. He said, what's going on here? Get out of here like a rotten bitch. Wendy shouted angrily. Camille, what happened? Asked Noah. Nothing. I want to go home. Please help me buy a ticket. Michael sat on the bench basking in the last rays of the autumn sun. Footsteps were heard. He turned his head and was surprised to recognize the familiar figure of his wife. Though he couldn't see her face yet, had she come back from America so soon? He wondered. I don't have a sister. Did you have a fight there? Camille said nothing, heading for the door. What you go with, you come back with. What do you want? Then go on your own. Why did you come here so angry and good? I don't need anything. How are the grandchildren? They're fine. Yesterday, my daughter-in-law came to visit. She said they're all healthy. That's our greatest treasure. Camille's back. Maybe she brought a present. Christina shouted, I brought you a present. I'll give it to you later. Camille was quiet. It had been a joyless trip. The return was the same. Would you tell me anything? Asked her to live well. Americans live well, but even their happiness is not given to everyone. Happiness does not depend on money and the fact that you have a 2-story house with a mirrored bathroom. You see, everyone is unhappy in their own way. And if someone is rich, they can still come up with 100 reasons to be unhappy. You tell me about Wendy, how she asked for Christina. That's what I'm talking about. She's got a house, 2 cars, but no joy. There's only anger, irritation, old age, and fear of death. Sister fights with Noah. Noah takes offense. That's their life. Camille took some beautiful colors out of her bag and gave the handkerchief to Christina. Thank Wendy for not forgetting about me. It's not Wendy. I bought it for you in Moscow, and my sister didn't give it to me. She promised to send you a package. The woman lied, not wanting to talk about her fight with Wendy. All right, I'll wait. Michael, leaning low over the desk, taking notes. Even though he was almost blind, he kept a diary. Today there's an entry in his notebook. It's a warm, sunny day. Fall is late. Camille came back and said that America has everything but happiness.